Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to yet another edition of the Lambom Show, another session on African immigrant men and mental health. And we are continuing our weekly series on men and mental health. And today's promising to be a very interesting topic. Last week, we talked about communication. And among the many things we emphasized about communication, we noted that it's important for us to learn to listen. And it was quite a very engaging conversation with BK. And we wanted to continue the conversation about communication by talking about something that we hardly talk about, by focusing on a topic that is considered kind of a taboo topic. We wanted to deal with sex today. Today is going to be interesting. Sex is considered a taboo topic even amongst married people. It is a great source of joy in many homes, but also a great source of problems. And not every couple knows how to deal with it. For some women, it is their only recourse, their only tool, their only weapon to be able to deal with their issues. And so we have had men, married men, or men in a relationship with women who have been sexually starved or sexually deprived. And at the same time, when you listen to women, you get the impression that this is something which is serious and many men don't take it seriously. And so we wanted to spend time today, not because we have the answers, but to engage in the conversation about this otherwise taboo topic. And I'll invite people. I mean, when I was preparing for this, I read a very interesting article. It's written by Rufaro Samnaga. I think she wrote this about 4 years ago or 5 years ago. And the topic is Enough. I will no longer be disappointed by African men in the bedroom. I'm going to be drawing a lot of inspiration from it because it's written by a woman, you know, talking about men. And I think it gives a certain perspective to the conversation. So if you are on and you have something you just want to maybe Google that or look it up or whatever pleases you. But she says something there that many times I've heard the tales of African men's legendary sexual escapades, always from African men. But my own empirical experience suggests these mad skills in the bedroom may be simply legend. That's interesting that it seems as if we men like to talk a lot about how strong we are in bed, but the woman is telling us that from our own empirical evidence, there's so much talk about our prowess in bed is just legendary. And I'm going to go through a couple of these while we go ahead, but I want to welcome again, as always, BK. BK, thank you for showing up. Because as we have said, that's the most important thing. You just show up. We don't show up here as experts. We show up to share our experience, show up to see how to give perspective to these conversations and see how we can advance the conversation. And if we could, proffer some suggestions as to how to move ahead. How?
Absolutely. So thank you, Lambert. Can I just check that you can hear me fine?
Absolutely, I can hear you. 5 on 5.
Yes, so thanks. Of course, it's always a pleasure to be here on a Monday evening. Monday historically is not the best of days. It's one of those days when we think, oh, not again. Start off a new week. Are we going to make it? What a day. What a life. And it's funny, I just like to start with this anecdote because we all love the weekend, we all love the holiday, we love Friday, and we forget that Monday is the portal into that weekend, into that Friday. And as with all things, nothing has meaning until we give it meaning. So yes, we're talking about this whole sexual enterprise. you said a few very important things there. Men and men's sexual prowess. I'm not sure how we want to do this today, but I'd like to start by saying that a definition is always a good place to start. And I see sex as an enterprise between two people. It is, you want to make the distinction between sex on the one hand and lovemaking. And I wonder whether we always take the time to make that distinction between the two. Because one is the act, the other one is the conversation. We're talking about communication, and it always comes back to, or it always comes down to that communication between two people. As with everything, again, you want to start by asking yourself, what is it that leads to sex? And what is sex? Let's come back to my favorite Lambert music. Take salsa, take the blues, take any form of dance, take the waltz. You realize it has got flow, it has got rhythm. It's like two people talking to each other, talking to one another. So one person leads, the other person follows. It's a conversation. At some point, it's meant to take a life of its own and go places that the two people, well, the two persons involved would never have gone if they had decided to sit and think it through. It's one of those places where you start, you're not sure where it's going to end, but you trust that the current of that particular engagement will be its own bearings, and you will respond, not direct. You're not trying to give it direction, you're just responding to what it is that is happening. It also means that before you get into that enterprise, you need to know what it is you're doing. You need to understand the rules, the terms of engagement. You need to know who you're dancing with. You need to understand your partner. And you all need to move to the same beat. Now, having said that, I'd like to throw the ball back in your court. Having set this as a tone or as a preamble for us to pitch this conversation on this dialogue on, I'd like to throw it back on your court so you can then maybe ask a few provoking questions and we run with it.
So I am happy because you like just packed in a lot in there. And first of all, the use of the word enterprise is kind of provocative because it seems to take us to a commercial thing. Okay, so again, when you take the sex thing, so there's some form of bargaining. Okay, so it's like marketing where there's a product and somebody is, but I see the qualifier later on when it comes to love making, isn't it? Then it becomes a conversation. And like we said last week, the conversation is the dancing. And I think the problem is more in terms of very often one person or both parties are dancing out of rhythm. And that is where there's that breakdown, isn't it? Because you also have to study. But let's talk about the sex part as an enterprise and then gradually move on.
Absolutely. So I use the word enterprise deliberately. Don't forget that even when you talk about an enterprise, what is an enterprise? An enterprise is a setup, is a configuration that is designed to provide service. Do we agree?
Yeah.
So take a corporate enterprise. It has something that it is selling. We are all personal services corporations, which means we sell ourselves all the time. Nobody will get married to you if you didn't have something to offer. It's just the world is so depraved today that when you talk about sales, everyone thinks about greed. When you talk about an enterprise or a corporation, everyone thinks about profit. Is that the way it should be? No. These are not meant to be taboo words because they have over time gained the status of taboo words, and they do unfortunately leave very bitter tastes in people's mouths. When we coin those expressions, we're thinking tax evasion, tax avoidance, and you name it, all manner of fraud. Whereas these are supposed to be enterprises that are out there to deliver services and to meet people at their point of need. Sex is no different. And then of course, again, when you use the word sex, it's a bit dry. It is just the act without meaning. When you infuse it with meaning, it becomes lovemaking. It transitions, transmogrifies, or morphs into the dance, which is what we are hopefully going to talk about, and then look at some of the constraints, look at some of the challenges, look at that male prowess that we seem to propagate. I love the French expression "combler le vide." You know, that which you are not on the inside, you project on the outside. You use words to fill the void that you feel on the inside. I'd like us to talk. Obviously, we're going to expand and expound on that as we go along, but I'll throw the ball right on your court. So again, you can throw a few comments and maybe ask more questions, and we can then play with it.
So, absolutely, when you talk about love making and you are trying to make that distinction between sex and love making, again, you seem to get down into this modernist conception that sex actually is supposed to be just for married people, if you want to take it from a certain perspective, isn't it? But we are beyond that, and that is why, because it has been misused, we are now living in a context where that misuse has become the norm, and therefore the other things that will flow from it. Because there's no reason why I should make a distinction between sex and love making, because technically, sex as the act is supposed to be a fulfillment, a culmination of that love making. Okay, so it could also come to a point where without the sex, there is still the love. Okay, because again, you want to talk about the people who have been in our parents who are 50 years in marriage and maybe no longer, it doesn't mean anything to them, isn't it? Yet they are still in love. But even within that context, it seems as if it is easier for the women than it is for the men to get into that, call it the feeling of love making. Because for the man, it seems as if it's just some straight shoot and then he's done. And again, the article that I mentioned, we're going to get into it. But I'm wondering, let's step back 1 second. You take somebody to, I want to use your analogy, communication as a dance. You have to ask the person out. Then the person comes, you walk the person to the floor. You get to the floor, the music is playing. You guys have to get in sync. Okay, then you start making sure that you are dancing according to the beat. And if you have been to any pop here, if they play an African music and you have some white folks there, you'll be surprised at how they are dancing and going off rhythm. Okay, but then they are enjoying it. They're still enjoying it, even though it is off the mark, according to those of us who are watching. So I'm wondering, what is it in sex that qualifies it as lovemaking?
So again, let's not forget. I like the example you gave just back there. The context of music, say on the concept of music, and you have someone. It doesn't matter who that person is. Let's say it could equally be an African who dances out of tune. Now, the question I would like to put to our audience, or the emphasis I would like to lay, would be you observing, you watching. If that person were dancing with you, they may be having fun and enjoying themselves. Now, if they're dancing with you, what's the vibe that you get? Do you feel comfortable? Notice there's something in you that will be slightly off, especially if you know how it should be done and you understand the rhythm that ought to be followed. Now, if that is not happening, you would feel something on the inside, which means you can't connect with that person. So there is this disconnect between you and that person. And if there's that disconnect, you notice each person will be doing their own thing. And that's where exploitation, so to speak, kicks in, because you're satisfying what you want, You're satisfying your needs, and you don't really care whether or not you're satisfying the needs of the other person. And if we
BK,
agree,
right,
yes,
right there. So while that is true, there's a tendency that when a man meets a woman and the man does not meet the expectation of the woman in bed,
mhm,
okay, so while the man feels a certain sense of fulfillment, and you get the sense of the woman pretending as if she also has attained a certain fulfillment, and
yes,
that is in different forms, whether the woman is crying and saying a few of those things, okay. But after some time, after some years, the woman tells you that for all these years, I've never felt this sense. I've never felt this sense of fulfillment. I've
yes.
really never understood what is going on.
Let's pick that apart. Let us
Okay.
pick that apart.
All right. Go ahead.
So, yes, so here's the thing, and this is something I deal with and encounter a lot. Sex is one of those things that will bring out the truth about your relationship. The way your spouse will react or respond to you in bed is a direct function of the communication between the two of you and the connection that exists between the both of you outside of the bedroom.
Can you say that one more
If
time?
yes, so and I will actually paraphrase it. I'll say it differently this
Yeah.
time. Sex in and of itself will expose the nature of your relationship. It does not define your relationship. It tells you what is there. And if there is absolutely nothing there, over time you will end up with that scenario that you just described, which is your spouse when she would have been fed up. You would notice usually this happens when communication has broken down and both parties are talking about, one or both parties are talking about irreconcilable differences. The truth starts coming out. That truth that was supposed to have come out 8 years prior comes out at the time when it can't serve anybody. It comes out when it's used as a whip, when it is used to throw a punch. And obviously, that is counterproductive. What do I mean when I say so? So, if your relationship with your spouse is one where your spouse realizes you have a bit of an ego and you're very volatile, as in you don't take the correction, and you like to think that you are this macho person and you've got it all. You've cut all the T's, you've dotted all the I's, and you are the alpha and the omega. In fact, you have such a fragile ego, she can't come anywhere near it, and she knows that. And for a while, because as you know, women are all about the enterprise of the home. Women are not about they're not about the house. They want to build a home, so they want to connect. And most often than not, they compromise on their values for the sake of peace. But this you can only do for so long, and that is the problem. So, because outside of the bedroom, which is what I said, what happens in the bedroom is a direct reflection and a direct function of what happens outside of the bedroom. The normal communication, the normal engagement. When you engage, is it transactional? Is it perfunctory? Or do you exchange energies and build synergies? Do you interact to engage and connect? Or do you interact to get A, B, C, or D ticked? Those boxes ticked and certain obligations met. Pay the bills, or who's paying this bill, who's paying the other bill, who's doing this chore, who's completing the other chore, who's responsible for what. But when it comes to actual connecting, which is what the relationship, the essence of the relationship is really all about, the two becoming one. If that never happens and one person compromises because they want to preserve the ego of the other one, then that translates into the bedroom. So in the bedroom, she believes, okay, here's the reading. In the bedroom, to the spouse, this is the only place, this is the only thing she knows that this man wants and so badly needs. If everything else has failed, let's see if we can use the bedroom to bring him back into this relationship. How about I inflate that deflated ego? How about I give him the impression he's king? Maybe he will love me more, especially if I don't even feel loved anymore because I've been pushed so badly. See, because that happens as well, especially when you have two people who walk past and talk past each other, but they do not communicate. What do I mean by that? People usually have different needs in a relationship. Sometimes the man is needy, but he expresses that neediness as bossiness. Sometimes the woman just wants to connect, but she expresses that connection as withdrawal because she wants to be chased. So you've got this dance. And if both parties do not understand each other, then guess what? They will miscommunicate all the time. They will reject each other all the time. And all the while, they won't know it. The other thing I'd like to highlight is meeting of needs. We have different needs and we project our needs onto our partners. So I may be thinking the most important thing is for me to provide a roof over my wife's, over my partner's head, and to provide that security. But I may fail to understand that, hang on a minute, my wife earns enough to provide a roof for herself. So if I were not there, she wouldn't be stranded. She just move into her own flat and she'd be able to afford everything that I'm killing myself trying to do for her. So by inference, what does that tell us? It doesn't matter how hard I work. It doesn't matter how hard I kill myself. She's not necessarily going to appreciate it. And if she does, she'll just be pretending because it is not something that she can't do for herself. If she's a housewife who has no other source of income, maybe. But if this is someone who can actually afford everything I'm trying to give her, then I'm killing myself trying to give a woman something she knows she already has. And obviously I'll feel small because I'll never get the kind of appreciation that I'm looking for. And if I do not get that appreciation, I don't feel validated. I don't feel significant enough. I don't feel useful. So already that will be the very first problem. And I will not be able to articulate that in a way that she can understand. So I try to be controlling. We come back to that whole thing. Don't forget, all of this has got context because ultimately, all these problems we will take to the bedroom. And then there will be a certain dynamic, and that bedroom is going to reflect every one of these problems. You have the man who then goes to the bedroom and he is satisfying himself at the expense of his wife for the most part. And that is the tragedy. And then you have the woman as well, who thinks, okay, let me make him feel good about himself. And this connects very seamlessly to the story or with the story that you gave, because for a man to think he is the bomb, for him to think he is the oracle in the bedroom, someone must have given him that impression. Guess who? Yours truly, his wife. And then, of course, if it's some extracurricular relationship out there, don't forget he's going to have to pay for that relationship, whether he was cheating on a girlfriend or cheating on his wife. Obviously, where I come from, my philosophy, at least as of now, based on our beliefs, it would typically be one man, one woman. It would be marital context. But hey, we live in the world that we live in, and we have to accommodate everyone. We don't have to agree with everything, but it is there. We deal with it. So you have this scenario where this guy then goes out there, it's an extramarital affair. He obviously, or the woman out there has to keep him coming back because obviously he's going to be paying one way or other for her upkeep. So you see how this narrative then gets propagated, sustained, and maintained. Because this other person will give him the impression he is all that. It's only when we come back to the moment of truth. You see, because again, he can't be all that because it doesn't matter how good you are. Nobody cares how great you are at what you do if they think you do not care. And so If you're amazing, satisfying yourself and not caring about the other person's needs, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're not going to be satisfying them. Because, like we said before, it's about this dance. Have you ever had a conversation with a woman? Talk to any woman anywhere. The less you talk, the more of a good conversationist you are. The more you talk, the more of a poor conversation you make. Because women want you to listen. And that is something we don't do too well. Why? We are looking to fix.
I think that ties in very much with what Marilyn says. Love making is emotional for women and more physical for men. I mean, it's I'm not sure whether we men too lack emotions, isn't it? Are we are just expressing our emotions in a physical way? I guess that's what she's aiming at, and it's kind of tricky, that you have the physical and the emotional, and how you marry the two, so that both so I can meet the emotional needs of my partner, and she can meet the physical needs, and how that dance, how we get to that dance, which is where we want to be. And I mean, I'm sure we're going to come to the orgasm part, but just staying on with the dance piece, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah, go ahead.
oh, okay. I just wanted to pick up on what Marilyn said. But can I be sure? Let me just be sure that you finished saying what you wanted to say. I
Yes.
don't want to cut you short.
No, you're right on point.
So Marilyn, thank you so much for that comment. I just love it. Remember, Lambert, we did say that words mean absolutely nothing until we give them meaning, because they are just containers. So when Marilyn says lovemaking is emotional for women and more physical for men, again, you realize you made a point which is very valid. Men and women are emotional. We are all emotional beings by and large. We like to think that we're these logical beings and all, but you realize that when push comes to shove, we buy people. Even when we go when we go shopping, we buy people, not necessarily products. That's why you go on the market, you'll notice that sometimes the best products do poorly and some of the worst products do very well. How does that happen? It is because people connect with people. Now, women are all about connection. Women are not afraid of being vulnerable and expressing their emotions, because that is where you come alive. What we call vulnerability, that is where we find our strengths, because that's where we connect with who we really are. This is not something that men do a whole lot. A man starts getting emotional, he rather go out and drink, or he rather just go out and do something that avoids him going to that place. He would go to his cave. He would do anything to run away from that emotion. Whereas the woman wants to connect. She wants to talk about what she's going through. She wants, so they get to feel every inch, every ounce of their emotions. Their soul is involved. Whereas for the man, men typically want to keep their soul out of the equation, because they think they need to be logical. They think they need to be reasonable. We have this crazy concept of this reason and this logic, which then transforms into being transactional. And it is that our transactional nature that obviously Marilyn would refer to as physical. See, because don't forget, women, when they make love, they too are physical. But then we're not seeing the physical side of it. It is not, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, I need to I need to find this word. So it is not rugged. It is fluid. It is seamless. We're back to the dance. So when you talk about emotion, you see flow, emotion, energy in motion. You've got flow, you've got feeling. Whereas when you talk about physical, it's more transactional, it's more perfunctory, which is exactly what we talked about earlier. And I think that is the distinction, because the man is thinking sex while the woman is actually flowing with sex. I don't know if that makes the distinction there. So the man is thinking about what he's going to do next, whereas the woman just knows what she will do next, especially if she is engaging with someone who understands her body language. And that is what we talked about initially when we said it's a dance. It starts with a normal verbal conversation. And I'd like to chime in, I'd like to throw in an example here because I've dealt with a couple before, and this is another thing. This is another thing which we men don't usually understand. So we've talked about a scenario where the woman just doesn't want to deflate the male ego. Then there's a scenario where, because sometimes it is the woman who is the problem as well. A lot of women have been battered and bruised. A lot of women have had bad experiences, so much so that you touch them, they react, because every touch reminds them of an experience they would rather forget. Women who've been abused as kids, women who've been or in their or in their teenage years, or who've had bad sexual experiences. Some of them may have been raped, and it's obviously it is as sad as it is, and it's not all the time that they want to talk about that. Many of them do not even talk about it. And so for us men, when we realize that a woman is now forthcoming, we may want to start asking ourselves these questions. When we realize she is absent, she's cut off, she shuts herself down, we may want to start asking some of these deep questions. We may want to connect with that woman to a point where she will actually tell us what the story is. So together, that problem can be resolved. I don't know whether to pitch in the particular example, what happened and how it was dealt with, or whether we touch on a
Just
few other things and then come back
no,
to it.
just go ahead with the example. Then let me come into something because I think it's important for us to zone in on that. But go ahead with
All
the
right.
example. I'm interested in hearing it.
Okay. So you have, hypothetically speaking, obviously I'm not going to be calling names, but so you have this lady who has had a really rugged, really rough time as a rough childhood. In fact, she's been used and abused by every single person who was ordained and put out there to take care of her. And some would abuse her and hand her down to their own friends who then abused her as well. So she came to a place where she couldn't trust men. And of course, sex just turned her off. Touching her was like being bitten by a scorpion. Did she love her husband? She would kill for her husband, but she had come to a place and a headspace in life where she could get an orgasm just by having a deep conversation and just connecting with her husband. So you realize again that it all comes back to communication. So how do you deal with this? All you want to do is identify one thing that works for the woman. She likes to talk. She wants to look at her man in the eyes. She wants to feel that connection. Meanwhile, you've got this man who obviously knows what the problem is, but he doesn't know how to handle it. It doesn't matter how gentle he is. It doesn't matter how careful he is. You get to that point where you set off a trigger, which takes the spouse back to that painful experience. It then sets off her biochemistry, and she goes to the emotions that she felt at a particular point in time, because that particular trigger will will kick off the homeostatic environment that led to those, that translated into those feelings. And so she feels those things, and it switches her off, obviously puts her in that fight and flight mode because she's in a state of fright. How do you deal with that? So it is relatively simple. You want to get the man to think about whatever it is he wants to say to the girl or to his spouse. And this is where, it needs to be someone who has got feeling as well. So rather than use words to communicate your feelings, imagine that you were using your hands to communicate the same message. So in your mind, think of what it is you want to say, and then use your hands to say it on her body. And that lit her up like magic. She was set on fire. And so you come to realize that it brings us back to this whole thing of everything is communication. And if you find the right channel, if you can tune in to the right wavelength, then you will reach the person's soul. You bypass what I call the police or the social construct. And what is this social construct? It is that police that we put out there. It's ordinarily called the ego. We put it out there and it represents us, and it serves as a filter. It shields the part of us that we think is fragile and vulnerable. So we never really engage. It engages for us and it tests everything. But people really don't get to interact with us because they have to go past that police or that social construct. But the person who can go past, who can earn the trust of the police or the social construct, gets through. And once you're through, Bob's your uncle. The dance can begin. Back to you.
I want to welcome those who are watching. We are on the Lambom Show. Tonight we are talking about African men, sex and relationships. With me on set is BK all the way from the UK. Marilyn, thank you. Julius Ferdinand several times. Greetings, my brother. Joanne Chendi, great discussion, gentlemen. Erika Kenji, I'm watching live with you guys. So thank you all, and you can post your questions if you have any. So again, that example is just so powerful. And why is it powerful? Because the gentleman maybe eventually found out the correct language, isn't it, to use, right? And I think the problem that we have is that breakdown in communication because we don't listen, even in physical communication. You know, we don't study each other, the partner's body, to be able to find out what is the best language of communication. And so it seems as if in this particular example, because the person now understood that conversation in a particular context, he had to translate the conversation with his hands to learn how to communicate to somebody who wants to converse and was able to break through that. I think for most of us men, maybe that's an exaggeration. It would appear we find it difficult learning the language of our spouse's body in order to be able to find out, to listen to that body, to find out how to effectively communicate the feelings. And that's why I had a problem with Marilyn, but you put it so well. We all are emotional. It's just the way in which we are coming across. And I'll get to the article in a minute. But I want to ask you, BK, what would you advise a man to do in order to be able to learn how, to listen to the partner's body so that they should be able to communicate? Because again, at one level, you don't want to go ask the woman what works for you, isn't it? What is it that makes you tick, isn't it? How should we learn to listen to our partner's bodies so that we can communicate better?
I love that question. Well, talk to me. Crying out loud. I'm joking. So that option is always there, obviously. But by and large, it all comes back to being vulnerable. See, because don't forget, we men we like to ace everything we do. We like to know that we are the best. It means if the feedback is not possible, if it's not positive, we don't want to hear it. When we get to a place and a headspace where we can take no for an answer, when we get to a place and a headspace where we can put the woman's needs ahead of ours, when we get to a place and a headspace where we realize that that relationship needs a leader, it needs someone who can be the bigger person, it needs someone who can go out there and seek to make it happen, someone who can put someone else's interests before theirs. So we need to learn how to be vulnerable, and that is why we get married in the first place. We may not know it, but our spouse is not there to serve us. Our spouse is there so we can serve them. When you put yourself at the service of someone else, you discover yourself, you find your strengths and your weaknesses. We've said this before. Don't forget, I only exist because I engage and interact with you. It is through my engagement and all my interactions with you that I come to define who I am. And I get to have a sense of purpose and a sense of essence and an identity. If I were locked in a little room doing absolutely nothing all by myself, notice I'm absolutely nothing. I only become something when I step out of that comfort zone and I start engaging and or interacting, and that is when I have an identity. And that identity is ephemeral, it is fluid, it changes with time every second. I think I'm frozen.
No, you're good. I can hear you and I can see you.
All right, brilliant. Yes, so just so I don't lose my trend of thought. So where was I? Sense of purpose gives us an identity. I'm sorry, this is how flow works. You see, because when you connect with the universe, it's like you download from the universe. So when something breaks that flow, you have to reconnect. And it's not always that easy. So yeah. So we're talking about identity, we're talking about flow, and we're talking about all that good stuff. So when I engage and I interact with you, then I have an essence, I have a purpose, I have an identity. I show up as one thing. Now, anyone listening to me right now, if I were to ask you, Lambert, based on the conversations that you and I have got, in fact, let me throw it at the audience, at our guests. If anyone were to guess, what do I do for a living? Who am I? What would they say? Let me know if we have any comments, Lambert. Okay. And Lambert, let me throw it to you as well. Just listening to me, these are the engagements you and I have on a daily basis, and the engagements we have when we come live to serve our community. If someone were to ask you, "Who am I?" what would you say?
Yeah, a therapist.
Okay.
Somebody, Marilyn says, a sexologist.
Okay.
Afori says a banker.
Okay. So, so and that is the point I'm trying to make. Notice I do not have an identity until you give me one. And I can't be anything other than what you define me, because that's your experience of me. I can't pretend to be a mother or a father or a teacher or a pastor. If when I engage, that's what you see. If I introduce myself as a father, that means absolutely nothing to you. If I introduce myself as an astronaut, that means absolutely nothing to you, and it doesn't serve any purpose in this particular conversation. And that's why we say when you show up, just show up as who you are, because your titles will limit you. I will not put a label on you alongside on you. Now, that is wisdom right there. That is wisdom right there. Okay, Kwame says, a good therapist. And again, Kwame, so you see, that's the way you resonate. That is what you see in me. That is what I evoke from within you. Someone else said a sexologist. That is, I can already tell that was it Marilyn. Marilyn is she's the sensitive type. She is the sort of person you want to cherish, because these are people who are very tactile and very emotional, which means if they feel supported, all you need to give them is a tiny amount of attention, a tiny amount of love, just a small amount, and they will put everything on the table for you. They will lay it out for you, and you will think you were Lord. Ask Marilyn if that is true, and she will tell you. So it is as simple as that. The thing that people resonate with most, people will tend to see themselves, the parts of their strengths, they will tend to see in you, because we all carry templates within us. So it is easy for us to identify that which we already are in other people. our strengths and our weaknesses, of course. See, because if I've got a particular weakness, it's very easy for me to identify that weakness in you. And it's even a lot easier for me to crucify that weakness in you than to point fingers at myself. Of course, it goes without saying that when I point that finger at you, 3 are pointing right back at me. So in effect, what I'm really saying is that I am the problem. You are energy. I love you, Jane. Thank you for that. But then, no, Jane, you're cheating. I've said I'm energy a lot. There you go, Marilyn. So again, that's your vibe. It is easy to pick up. And that's why, again, I say for a man who can listen, you don't need to say much. By the time you say 1 or 2 words, they know exactly how to engage with you, how to relate with you, how to get to your sensitivities, how to touch you, how to meet you at your point of need. Marilyn is the sort of person who just wants to come and talk and have you listen. She doesn't need your help. So Lambert, remember that. Sylvie is here. Actually, I think that will work. Ask her.
So yes, I think yes. Again, I think just getting back to that level. I mean, I think it's important. We're talking here about sex as a form of communication, and again, we have talked a lot about the danks, listening to the other's body and finding out. Because again, like Marilyn said before, women are more emotional and men are more physical, isn't it? And I keep saying I will reference that article. I'm going to talk about 2 things that the author said there, isn't it? I'm going to come back to it, but then women are shy because again, the man wants to ace everything, and the woman knows that this is my treasure. Why would I just give it up? You look for it. You should discover it, and I'm sure there's some treasure, some pleasure in discovering that which opens up your wife or your partner rather than just letting it out. Okay, this is what you should do and all that. I mean,
Lambert. I think you need to come to the UK. Look, all expenses covered. Come to the UK. I need to spend 2 weeks with you. You're just horrible. Oh my goodness. Oh no, please. All right. I apologize on Lambert's behalf. I'm joking.
of course I know. Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's touch. Let's pick what you just said apart. It's important that we put it in the context. Women are very shy. That couldn't be further from the truth. See, what we do not understand, Lambert, is that the woman is stronger than the man. I'll say that again. The woman is 1,000,000 times stronger than the man. They will pander to our weaknesses, and that is where they fail us cataclysmically. That is where women destroy us. You see, because when they're dealing with their kids, they will put their kids in the straights and narrows. Okay, some of them actually do fall for the tantrums that their kids throw. But the woman will read us. They can read us from a mile, Lambert. And no, women do not play games. You see, because women go with flow. Like I said, when you engage and you start a conversation, your job is to start the conversation. The woman understands that there is a certain wavelength, there's a certain frequency, and it is a dance. She doesn't know what the next move will be. If you touch the right button, she will respond in the right direction and she will know what to do next. And if you're in flow, then both of you will glow and you would realize that the next steps pretty much defined. They pretty much define themselves, and that book or the next chapter of that story writes itself. You don't have to think. You switch your mind off. You switch the brain off. You switch the heart on. And women do that seamlessly. That's what they do on a daily basis. Look, I'm not being sexist here, but let's look at COVID. Look at the countries that were managed by women. See how they handled COVID. Women can feel a situation. That is the whole thing about intuition. They intuit the environment. They know what to do. They can't justify it. If you ask them to, oh, why are you doing it this way? They say, I don't know. I just feel it. And then we think they're mad. We think they're stupid. What is wrong with you? You're going to justify this with your feelings. No, thank you very much. And then we come in and we cast reason and our logic, and we've got a nice little formula where we put everything inside, and then something comes out the other end, and we're proud of ourselves. The buggy program, it never works, but we're always proud of it. And then when it crashes on its face, we go back to the woman and say, what did you say again? Say, okay. You just got lucky. No, they usually don't get lucky. When you look at women, female leaders, they come, a woman is chairing a meeting. What does she do? She starts asking people about their families. She's connecting, she's bonding. They do it naturally. Nobody teaches them that. Intuitively, they know that if you can get people to relax, the best of and in them will come out naturally. That's why they say behind every successful man is a woman. Because the woman picks you up when you fall. Sometimes she picks you up, you don't even know you fell, and she picked you up. You don't realize something even happened anywhere. That is how amazing a woman is. So any man who's watching, any man who's listening, I'm going to tell you, if you're going to have an enemy, let it not be a woman. And if it absolutely must be a woman, that's fine. Make sure it is not your spouse, not your wife. Because when she turns against you, that's a battle you can't win.
I'll disagree with you, BK, but let's move on. And CV comes in here to say that women are that way because our society has placed labels on them. If they express their sexual desires, they are the whores, so they need to feel safe to express themselves, and the Pandora box will open. Yeah, I mean, I guess that Pandora box just takes a long time to open when this thing, this dance is supposed to be natural, isn't it? The man has his own Pandora's box is always there, open completely. Why is it taking the woman that long? But I mean, again, like you said, women are more intuitive and they're a million times stronger than men, and they need to go with the flow. And I love what you said, that it just the touch. When you touch at the right place and in the right time, then the whole thing opens up, isn't it? And the rhythm, the pace cannot be every day and in every circumstance. It goes up and down, isn't it? There's no, it doesn't go in a linear fashion, isn't it? You have to, that dance comes in and out at a certain point. What do you think?
So I'd like to start with what Sylvie said. Society has placed, if you could just bring her, yes. So Sylvie says women are that way because our society has placed labels on them. If they express their sexual desires, they are hoes. So here's the thing. While that is true in and of itself, by and large, within the context and confines of society, you would notice that if that comes into the home, then the man has failed. Let's start there. Would you agree with me, Lambert?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because the man is the person who's supposed to shave that label. The man is the person who's supposed to then make that woman feel so comfortable that she can be herself, she can connect with and be herself again. And these are the things, because if we do not realize our responsibilities in each other's lives,
sure.
then we carry on being each other's rival. And I think the problems that we see today with failed sexual encounters, which really are a product of, or a mirror reflection of failed relationships, is exactly this communication breakdown that sex or the bedroom exacerbates and exposes. So I think we've talked about that a whole lot. Let's come back to the question that you asked. Can you just repeat your question so I do not veer off too far?
So I was saying for the women, I mean, all of us are emotional, isn't it? So the man is also expressing his emotion. It's easy for him. His Pandora's box is already open, isn't it? He's taking the woman. He has to take the woman a long time to come on and all that. Why that? All of us should just, and in that dance, isn't it? We move on, and as we dance along, yes, it may go for a while, but there will be ups and downs. You cannot expect the experience to be the same all the time, isn't it? There will be high moments, low moments. And I think the problem comes with the expectations where, because it happened this way, let us keep it that way throughout, isn't it? There will be those moments. Or am I wrong with that?
Yeah, no, there are those stereotypes. There is obviously the playing safe as well, which obviously sometimes can be a problem in and of itself. So don't forget again that we've got physiologically we're different. Physiologically, obviously. So you've got one person. So an orgasm means something else for a man. An orgasm means something else for a woman. The woman is the recipient, the man gives. So when we talk about an ejaculation, for instance, you come to the climax of your business and then obviously you release. Cool. Um, but how do we get there? How soon can we prep ourselves to get to that place? And that is where our physiological differences come into play. You see, the man can move from, the man can actually think himself into a situation. With women, they need to relate themselves into that situation. The fantasy is not good enough. So there needs to be a connection, there needs to be dialogue, there needs to be that whole warm up, which is what the dance is really all about. It's between two people. It's not just one person. So whenever the man comes in to satisfy his ego, to get whatever, I call it not verbal elation, sexual excitement, you're actually using the woman to satisfy your carnal desires, or we are using the woman or our spouses to satisfy our carnal desires. And that is abuse, whether we know it, acknowledge it, or not. If you just jump in, do your business, and jump out, that is abuse. You disrespect your wife, actually. And your wife will know. But how do you complain? And that's where the problem is. So you can't blame someone else for having a different physiology. If you're going to go dancing with someone, salsa, for instance, or zouk love, or even slow, or whatever, or waltz, anything that requires two people dancing, you have to sync up. You need to learn the steps. You need to learn the different moves, the different styles. Otherwise, you will be stepping on each other's toes. There's nothing worse than stepping on each other's toes in the bedroom. See, because you just put the woman off. And she goes in there, she may act all that pleasure, but she just can't wait for that nightmare to be over. And when you get to that point, your marriage is done. It's just a matter of time. At some point, it will be the end. You guys can still be together. She will wake up, she'll say good morning, she'll smile. Most marriages, as in most divorce cases, and literally all the scenarios I've dealt with, the woman was done long before the first fight showed up, the first significant fight, not even to talk of the divorce. By the time you get to the point of a divorce, the woman she was done with the relationship 2 years in a row, 2 years before, 3 years before, and she was just coasting. And they can do that because they can shut themselves out. This is something men don't realize. A woman can go easy 9 months, 1 year, 2 years, no sex. She will be fine. Now, these are the physiological differences I'm talking about right now. Now, just tell a man that, okay, cool, dude. Um, Here's the deal: you're gonna have to go 2 years without sex. I bet you he will start suffering from COVID symptoms. That's it.
Okay. That's funny. Okay, let me get to Kwame's thing because Kwame has an interesting take on this. He says, are we talking about African women or women in general? With African women, I agree with most that you are saying. Women in general, I have many questions.
Okay, yes, no, that's an amazing one. So let me now rephrase, and I love this, Kwame, because we're talking about male and female energies, and sometimes in a relationship, the male energy is coming from the woman, and the female energy is coming from the man. So when we talk about female energy, the female energy is that playfulness. Oh, you want to dance, you want to tease, you want to play, you want to connect. Male energy is I want to conquer. This thing needs to be done and it needs to be sorted, certified. So yes, society is changing in many ways. So these are generalizations that we're making, but it doesn't cut across the board. So we have to break them down into male and female energies for us to really put things into context. And yes, it speaks a lot more to the concept of the man being the head of the family, and where the man is I don't want to use the word dominant, but where the man is the one running the show, as in, okay, the woman can have her strengths, areas where she leads. The man will have his strengths, areas where he leads. Where there is an impasse and the two are not sure which way to go, and they're going back and forth, if somebody has to call the shots, then the man does as the head of the family. So if you've got that hierarchical structure where one leads, but they don't lead because they are better, they simply lead because, all right, two people cannot run the show at all times. And we know how society typically works. Society has got its biases as well. When you show up as Mrs. A, B, and C, in most places, you get a different kind of respect than if you were to show up as Miss A, B, and or C. And all these things will play into people's subconscious minds. A man leaving his marriage, and a woman leaving his marriage. All of these are it's all beginning to change as the field of play levels out. But by and large, in any situation, you will have a dominant character and you will have a recessive character, and relationships are no different. You'll always have that person who the other one tends to listen to. Because if you've got two dominant characters, then obviously it's a recipe for disaster and chaos in the making. I hope that kind of addresses that question. That was a beautiful question and I love it. Very thought-provoking.
So, BK, I'd like us to transition a little bit to something before, but let me read it. Jude.
Yeah, there was a comment there, I think, from Jude, a long comment.
Yes, that's what I wanted to read. It says, sex is a potent form of communication. When you get the comment that our marriage has become sexless, you cannot help being troubled by such oversimplification of sex. We should always place sex in proper perspectives. There are many aspects to sex that aren't intercourse: hugging, kisses, flirting, holding, teasing, complimenting. If a partner who is wanting physical intimacy is often angry or blaming or impatient, that makes it hard for a partner who is struggling to be playful or relational.
Absolutely, Jude. Absolutely. I mean, you nailed it right there. That's what Jude has said it in a few sentences what I was drawing paragraphs and writing books and publishing encyclopedias trying to say. So we come back to that male and female energy. We come back to different ways of responding. I think the connotation we gave it at the beginning was sex and lovemaking.
Yeah.
Sex, which is the dry act, and lovemaking, which is the full story, and the dance. And Jude captured it so well.
That gets me into this. Again, I put up an article at the beginning. You can go back to watch. It's written by Rufaro Samnaga. I think she's from South Africa, and she wrote this article in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. The title is "Enough. I'll no longer be disappointed by African men in the bedroom." Okay, this is what I mean. Just to speak to that particular issue, this is what she says. What I've observed is how men all have certain unsavory traits in common. Chief amongst them is the issue of foreplay, or rather the distinct lack thereof. The African men in my study are really averse to foreplay. And I'm not certain if this is because of their general ignorance of the female form or the extra effort required on their part to get us turned on and into it, or if they just couldn't be bothered. I'm personally betting on the latter, which means men are just not bothered about it. So let's talk about this foreplay, because I think that's part of what Jude was talking about, which
Yeah.
is, again, getting that the dry sexual act is, I mean, put it in context, a part of the lovemaking enterprise. And if you just go forward in that, then there's a problem.
That's a problem. It's just a recipe. It's a plane crash. See, it's a plane crash. See, because if you want the full, if you want the the full cycle end to end, then you want to have a conversation from start all the way to orgasm, which goes something like this, but without words. Sweetheart, how was your day? What did you do today? Where does it hurt? How can I make a difference? What if I touch here? What if I go in this direction? How are you feeling now? Is that any better? All right, don't worry. I'll take care of you. Right, good. All right, that maybe that did not work. Let's try it. Let's run in this other direction. So you're moving in these different directions, and you're listening for a response, which is something men don't do. In, do your business, come out. You're not listening to see. You're not listening to understand what the other person's body is doing, because it is a person's response and or reaction. What do I mean by this? A response is encouragement. A reaction is that hurts. That's uncomfortable. Now, between you and I, Lambert, and I know we can't make generalizations, but how many men do you think are even listening for what the spouse's body is doing when they are stressed? Because don't forget, you will read books and the media doesn't help, because you see all these articles. I was reading one the other day. Sex is going to, it cures headache. It's like a painkiller. Sex is, if you touch a woman's breast, you live longer. And so it just demonizes it eventually. I mean, this, okay, good. While they may be true, you realize that eventually sex takes on a completely different meaning. It loses its value, its valor is sacrificed and compromised. So you have things that are intended for good, but these are natural, and they really typically will not happen anyway if you're going and that's your focus, because it's a whole compendium of different things that have to come together to create that outcome. It's a whole cluster of different biochemical principles and releases, engagements, and interactions that come together that require body, soul, and spirit being one, communicating with the other body, soul, and spirit, and all being one as energy, moving with the same wavelength, dancing to the same tune. That is what creates that synergy, and that is what brings that healing. Because at that time, you really become one with the universe. You connect with the universe and you become a conduit.
I can't help this, VK. When you ask an African man to do something to turn the wife on, mind you, he's the one complaining. All you get is them binding and casting Holy Ghost fire. Holy Ghost doesn't help you to turn on your wife to be at your level in bed. Try ignorance in a society. Can you talk about? I'm sorry, Evelyn Chong, thank you very much for joining us. But
So can you just bring it up? Can you just bring it up again, please? Okay, so do you know? So Sylvie says, "Do you know why
oh,
most times?"
no.
Let's
Hold
go.
on.
Let's go. Yeah, let's go to
I'm
Evelyn
sorry, I got
first.
it.
Yeah, let's go to Evelyn first.
Yes, let me get to her. I'm sorry, I had to miss that.
So when you ask an African man to do something to turn the wife on, mind you, he is the one complaining. All you get is them binding and casting. Holy Ghost fire. Holy Ghost. doesn't help you, turn on your wife to be at your level in bed. Try ignorance in our society. Well, hey, Evelyn, I'd say we should pray, but what else can I say? And this is so, Evelyn. I guess this is where, as a community, we need to step up. Why do I say so? And I know that, Evelyn, you're not in any way being derogatory. You're not being disrespectful and anything. But typically, I go out in the world, and when something has happened, especially between a man and a woman, and it was unfortunate, a man committed suicide, a woman killed herself because her man cheated, or a man kills his spouse because she cheated, and all whatnot. All those gory stories. You go out in the society and you see the polarization, men versus women. And that is just the state of affairs. It just tells you that we are so far apart. Healing is a far cry, and that breaks my heart because it makes it even harder for us to realize that this is a failed enterprise, collective failure, the man and the woman. It takes two people to run a relationship. It takes two people to crash that relationship. It's always both parties have failed. That is what I always notice. That's what I've come to realize. Now, the problem or the challenge here as well is we tend to try to quantify and to qualify pain, which is just another recipe for disaster because no two people experience and or feel pain in the same way. I could do this one thing today, and I think it's absolutely nothing. But to you, I've insulted you so badly, you won't talk to me for the next 10 years. And then you do something and you think, oh, wow, this is going to really get to him. But it doesn't affect me at all. But it will affect the next man so badly, he would end up in a coma or he would jump off a cliff. Why am I saying this? Because when we get into a situation and we say, oh, well, but this person did this, or the other one did the other one, oh, but this is the only thing. This is the only thing that this person did. Why did this person respond this way? No two people feel pain in the same way. We don't know what pain people already carry. We don't understand what baggage they bring from the past, and we don't know what the experiences they have. We don't know how these experiences translate into triggers that take them to a place they had once been before and barely survived. So you could be doing something to someone today. You think, oh, this is what you're doing. You don't realize that it is just that drop that make that glass of water spill over. And then that person does something which is completely unacceptable. And everyone is bewildered. All eyebrows are raised. How could she behave or react that way? Like the woman who killed herself the other day because her husband cheated. Some of the stupid, well, I don't want to use the word stupid, but some of the incensed and some of the naive comments that I heard, just a reflection of where society is. And so I feel sorry for those people who make those comments because it is clear that they themselves are victims of their own circumstances. They themselves are in a pit and they don't see it. So that is part of the problem being propagated right before our eyes. Or the man who killed himself. Same thing, some of the man who committed suicide. Again, so while you could argue that this is somebody who clearly doesn't understand the tenets of marriage, they don't understand the grand scheme of things in the gambit of life, that the people around us are actually there designed to help us grow, take us to a place of enlightenment where we can then self-actualize. As in, our job is to make situations better. You come into a conversation, you make it richer. And when you're leaving that conversation, you are better than you were before you joined it. And if we all could have this compass, this moral compass, you'd realize you don't come to take, you come to give. And in giving, you are fulfilled. So you take even more than you gave. The question is, when are we going to get there? Because if we can get to that place, then the marriage is saved, the home is saved, and society, obviously, is saved.
Guys, love this discussion. The more you listen and learn, the more you realize you know nothing. And I wanted to come to this Sylvie's thing that you put up here. Do you know why most African women resonated in Bridgertown? I have not watched that, but I just Googled it and I saw it. I have to check it out. Not because it was such a great movie, but because of the tenderness with which the guy treated the lady. He spoke to her, asked her what she wanted, and took his time with her. He made it about her. Our African men tend to make it about them. Our culture has not helped. Abeg una ask una, I'm sure woman them how them they feel. So again, Marilyn, I'm coming to you. That will be the last part of it. We are going to end 15 minutes, but we are going to talk about orgasm. Marilyn is so much about the orgasm part, but I mean, can you speak to what Sylvie is saying there? And well, you talked about it already, isn't it? The fact of how you get into that game already, okay?
Yeah.
How you get
Yes. So here's what
the tenderness.
here's what I will say. If I add anything to what Sylvie just said, I will do it so much injustice. So this is where a man should learn to shut up and tell a woman she said it all.
No comment from my side because I'm a man. Maybe if there was a woman here, then we could get to it. But again,
She is so right.
yes,
Put it
ask your
mildly.
women how you are feeling. So Evelyn, before we get to the last part of it, I love this show. I do counseling at times. For some reason, most of them will tell you God did not say do this in the bedroom or that. But how do you expect your marriage to work in this type of situation? I think we should also take time to educate people on how to be romantic in bed or in homes with their spouse. Sorry, not being disrespectful, but it's just my experience with a lot of couples. I think, BK, we can take that for next week. Okay, let's continue the conversation about how to be romantic. How should men be romantic for next week? But let's end up with this famous thing that which I also wanted us to talk about.
Okay.
And this is it. When will we address orgasms and the inability of men to deliver? Is having an orgasm every time an unreasonable expectation for women? And let me read this, BK, because it also ties in with the article that I talked about. This is
Yeah.
Rufa.
Can I just
Yeah.
throw something in? You know the question that I think was it Evelyn asked.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Evelyn is going to be here next week. If she's not going to be here next week, then I'll suggest we stretch and answer this question at the end, just so at least she is served as well.
Okay.
So Evelyn, are you going to be around next week? If you will be, let us know. If not, then we will deal with the question here. If we have to stretch a bit, we'll do that. Carry on, Lambert.
Okay, so let's get to this. And I was going to read something from the article that I quoted at the beginning. The thing is, I really want the big, oh, this is the lady talking, okay? This is a lady, Rufaro Samnaga. She's South African. The thing is, I really want the big O. Sure, African men have upped their endurance game and added a few more minutes to that clock, but their sole motivation for that has been born out of wanting to compete with other men instead of using that extra bit of time for our benefit. Naturally, African men are selfish in that regard, and I'm calling them out on it. For all the pressure that we as women put up with, having to look like a Victoria's Secret model, having to constantly shave and be a wild cat in the bedroom, we are certainly not going to be putting up with below average performances from men who certainly blow their own horns about a sexual prowess they simply don't have. So again, orgasm is a big issue within our community. I mean, so let's what do you have to say?
So I would say that communication is very sensitive, and what we say is just as important as how we say it. We fail to realize maybe that the only reason men would struggle with this again is we've already highlighted the fact that men are vulnerable, too vulnerable to want to fail, makes them selfish, and they wouldn't deal with things. Eventually, we come to a point where it is survival of the fittest. Each person is just trying to get what it is that they want. So what I wouldn't say I frown at, but what I would like for us to look for a completely different way, a different narrative, a different way of postulating is identifying a problem in the bedroom and looking for constructive ways of solving that problem. See, when we are calling people out, we make people feel even more vulnerable. When we are encouraging people to realize that there is a void that is not being met, and if we realize as well that, hey, it takes two to tango, which means we've covered the scenario where a lot of women give men the impression that they're doing great just because they are pampering their egos. We all know how it works. In the home, every home starts as a house. And typically, a house is a place where you don't have a woman or the motherly touch. That nurturing touch is what transforms a house into a home. If you walk into a place and it doesn't feel homely, it means the bedroom will be chaotic. And you will know when you walk into a home. If a woman's touch is in that home, then you know that there's a certain level of communication between the man and the woman. But if there's already competition at that level where the man is trying to be the one to set the place up, and the woman has got a natural penchant for it, and she has a natural predisposition, and she's just inclined to do stuff, and she really wants to do them, but the man is actually getting in the way every time. So you've got that conflict at that level. It will translate in the bedroom. So like we said before, the bedroom is the place that prints out. It does a printout of all the things that are wrong with the relationship and in the relationship. So when you go in there, it's a bit like a report card, and it tells you how you're doing. Both you, the man, well, for you, the woman, it tells you how you are doing. That's what you ended up with. That is who you chose. That is the person you decided you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Now, did you spend your time helping this man grow? Did you spend your time just as you want him to take time to understand how you function as a woman and what is going to make you, what will make you come alive? Or what will put you in a place where you express your best, you blossom as a flower? You want him to take the pains to do that. Did you take the pains to help him grow as a man to a place where he could really mature and be the best that he could be with the resources that are germane, innate to him? Now, if you did not do that out there, how do you expect him to live up to expectation in the bedroom? Because it is an enterprise, albeit a social enterprise, which means like the left hand and the right hand. The left hand doesn't serve the right hand. The right hand doesn't serve the left hand. They complement each other. So if there is no complementarity outside of the bedroom, there will be no complementarity in the bedroom. Back to you, Lambert.
So again, I mean, just in relation to that, we know that men are very stubborn, isn't it? And I mean, I want to say this in a different, put it in a different context, because the ego, which is so beautifully expressed today, is something that is so peculiar to us men that we put it at a gate. That's what defines everything. And the man does not want to be told that he is not performing, he's not up to par, isn't it? Because that already then destroys everything. So in this context, and I'm just following up on Marilyn's question, how does the woman help the man to be able to discover that even though he thinks that he's in bed, he's actually just call it a cat or whatever you want to call it? How do I mean do it in a way that is respectful, but you're able to let the man see that yes, even though I see you struggling with it, and I think that we need some help in order to get you to where you want to be. Very often men don't think
Lambert,
that kindly.
Lambert,
Yes.
I'll send you that ticket. I'll send you that ticket. You have to come to the UK. Wait, did I hear you correctly? You want a woman to tell a man that, look, you're struggling, but I can help you. We can do this.
I'm not saying, well, I'm saying, I mean, I'm just following up.
I
Yes,
understand, of course, I understand what you're saying. I understand. It's just for comic relief.
Mhm.
So as with every other engagement, find that one thing that the man does right. That one thing that he touches, even if it is accidentally. When he does, hold him there. Say, yes, go, yes. Let him know that there was a reaction there. Eventually, it switches him on. Something that you do in the positive will switch him on. They say if you focus on your strengths, they grow. If you focus on your weaknesses, they grow. What I love about these conversations is that it doesn't just apply to the bedroom. Whatever it is that applies to the bedroom will apply to life as well. If you can find your areas of commonality and you start growing those areas where you agree, it starts expanding. It expands at the behest of what you two share in common, which is beautiful, and at the expense of the differences that you have. So, what you have in common will grow. Those differences that were so magnanimous will begin to shrink. Same principle, same concept. When you find that thing that brings you alive, when it touches that thing, when it touches that switch, hold him there, guide him there. And when he realizes that your body responded in a certain way, eventually you will get him to a point where he will switch off his brain. You see, because men are trying to be logical. They're trying to remember what they saw in this place or in that other place that made the woman do A, B, or C. They're trying to live out their fantasies of what will work or wouldn't work. So they are not present. Talk about mindfulness. No, no, no. You are there. You are right there. Live the experience. Don't bring an experience that you think will work. And that is part of the problem. So you don't respond to what is happening in front of you. You're trying to transpose something that you have played in your head into that scenario. No, she's not dancing to that tune. She's not receptive to your play. For that to work, both of you would have had to rehearse that scene. You can't bring something that you've rehearsed with her in her absence into the bedroom and you're trying to get her to play her role. No, there will be, what do you call it?
Dissonance.
Dissonance. That's the word I was looking for. There'll be that cognitive dissonance. And so it's almost like trying to fit your right hand into a left glove. It's not going to work. And you will feel the friction, you will feel the resistance. And both of you will know at the end of that engagement that it did not work, which is why there will be that silence, that uncomfortable silence, for those who know what I'm talking about. Those are the
So,
cues. Again,
so, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everybody for participating. I think we're going to continue these conversations. Marilyn says, Lambert, we need a part two. Uh, Evelyn, I will be here. Thanks. I will be here next week. Great job. And we need more of this. Again, I, as always, want to thank BK for great insights. I think we're going to continue these conversations next week. We're going to focus on romance and sex for men. Okay, how we build that. Remember, this has all been about communication as a form of a dance and how you get into the rhythm and all that. We talked a little bit about foreplay today, and I would like us to get into that part of orgasm. I realized you kind of went around it today, but I love us to get into. And I'll tell you this: there are a few women who have told me that Nigerian men are more romantic than Cameroonian men. That's something that we can, focus on too and get to it. Any last comments, BK? Thank you so much, guys. I learned so much, Marilyn. Thank you, Marilyn, for being available and sharing our platform.
absolutely. So Marilyn says Nigerian guys are more
No,
romantic than
it's not Marilyn. It's just, this is outside. It's some
okay,
other
all
person.
right. Some other person that said that. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, think about it. So you notice that Nigerian men generally, they are very enterprising. They're businessmen, so they can sell.
That's good.
So they'll sell a good story. They will sell a good story, and they will sell themselves. They will talk you into an orgasm. So so just to say, so just to say, Lambert, I did not skirt the orgasm subject. What I did. See, because sometimes we focus on the outcome so hard, and then we make it very difficult for people to reach that outcome because they don't understand how to get there. It is the process, and the orgasm. That orgasm is an outcome. Is the outcome of a process. If you get everything right, the orgasm is a natural outcome. You catch my drift?
Yeah.
So when I talk about the orgasm in this context is not a man ejaculating. That is not an orgasm. I'm talking about an orgasm where both people feel the energy and it's almost synchronized. That is what I'm talking about. The natural outcome to a successful process, to a successful enterprise, to a successful dance, where two people have engaged, they have respected the sacrosanct nature of their sacred bodies, they have surrendered, completely given themselves to each other. They have embraced vulnerability at its best, become one with one another and with the universe, divine intelligence. They have flowed from that, and it has culminated in this fire that explodes like a volcano, and the outcome is an orgasm. You would notice that the orgasm is not something that you try to achieve. It's not something that you make happen. It is something that you let happen. So the focus shouldn't be the orgasm. The focus should be what you need to do to make sure that that food is cooked right. If you get all the right ingredients together, the food sorts itself out. If you don't get the right ingredients together, it doesn't matter how well you cook that food, how long you cook it for, you will end up with something that will just help you live to the next day. On that note, I'd like to say it's really an honor to be here. It's really an honor to serve in this capacity, especially if what we're doing here is making a difference. If it prevents just that one divorce. Notice, you would notice we're not selling anything here. We're not saying, oh, well, if you need this or you need the other one, come here or go here. That's not what this is really all about. We want to start a conversation that will have a ripple effect, that will touch lives that will then touch other lives. And we'll have this cascading effect to the point where we will hopefully change as a community and become more resourceful and be proud of ourselves as a community, not successful individuals within a community, but a successful community of individuals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, BK. We started off talking about Monday as a gateway to the weekend. I think it's refreshing to be back to a work week, and listening to you every Monday is quite refreshing. I want to thank you for making the time. And one of the lessons that I learned today is that when you're in a relationship, it is not so much for you, but to serve the other person. And in serving the other person, you even gain more. Because at times we become too selfish. We are thinking only about ourselves. But when we serve the others, we get more. And this has been, I did not know how this topic was going to go today, but it has been very enriching. And I think we are going to continue again next week. I want to thank all those who were present today: Erica Kenji, Marilyn Dwa, Evelyn Chong, Sylvie Moore, Antonio Montana, Jude Ozugen, Kwame Fripong, Jane Shitty, and many more whom I cannot because they did not leave any comments. Jen Chendi. We are here every Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. GMT. We are handling issues of men, African immigrant men, and mental health. And today we're focusing on sex. Our show will continue next week on Monday, March 1st, and we'll be talking about romance and sex in continuation of our series on communication. While this week I'm going to have continue the other series on African immigrant and international and African development on Wednesday. See you. Great show, says Jen Chendi. Will return for more. Thank you all and have a good evening.